all you beautiful listeners. Thank you for joining us at Five Lemons Laughing. I'm Amanda, and we have all the Lemonettes present today. I'm so excited. So today we are talking about surrender. What if the key to a more peaceful, joyful, even productive life isn't about cramming more into an already packed schedule? But what if it's about letting go? Really letting go of all the shoulds, the control, the mental juggling acts. Today, we're talking about surrender, not as a last resort, but as a spiritual power move. We're sharing the beautiful ways this shows up in real life, how it can crank us up to more grace, and while loosening our grip might just be the most powerful thing that we do all week.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. And hi, everybody. This is Morgan. Yeah, so in this episode, we're going to be unpacking the unexpected ways that surrender can actually increase your clarity, your presence, and even your productivity, and how grace often arrives the moment that we finally stop trying to force an outcome, and how to tell the difference between giving up and letting go. So whether you're a lifelong planner or just feeling weighed down by all the shoulds, this episode is for you. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let's explore how surrender might just be your new superpower.
Yeah. We're all just sitting here going, huh.
You've got something they're ready to surrender.
That's so funny. We're all practicing like letting go of control and letting someone else talk. It's backfiring on us.
Geez. This is just triggering for me. I mean, I feel like, this is Melissa, and I know that my wisdom is my superpower. And we've discovered that on past episodes. But I would say my wisdom is my superpower because I've had to deal with trying to let go of control my whole life. And that has created my wisdom. So it's been hard for me. And it's like one of those lessons that just keeps coming up for more release, more healing. And I have definitely come to the place where I have a meditation practice, and it's probably so strong because I struggle with control a lot. So this is my way to remind myself, to give me a space to let go of the things that I think I have to control. And control's always been like a lifesaver for me. So I could plan what was next in my childhood even. I could make sure nothing was going to happen to us that was anything negative. So it worked for me. But I know now, it also made me sick. It made me tired. It made me, I think, push people away because no one wants to be controlled all the time. And that's definitely how I lived my life, at least the first 30 or 40 years. So anyways, I have found that better things happen for me when I do let go of shoulds, because there's a whole infinite possibilities of what could happen for me when I let go of control. So I just want to kick that off because it's been a huge part of my life lesson.
Melissa, is it in a particular area of your life that it shows its face more, or is it kind of across the board?
Oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's literally everywhere. But I do know that I do a lot better with it when I don't judge and criticize myself. It's not that I don't. Um, I now catch myself doing it, and I will feel bad about it for a little bit, but I'm more aware of when I am controlling, and so I can let go. I can clean up my side of the street. I can apologize to those people that I were trying to control, people, places, and things. Um, so it's across the board, Morgan.
Mm.
But it's also, you know what? Probably my greatest teacher.
Yeah.
Throw this up in the air because like I can just feel like all of the controllers out there going, if I don't control everything, then, the world's going to fall.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
what about, let's just break it down to a little, into small little bites where the controller can just let go. So what would the difference be between, the surrender, like we're talking about, and forcing outcomes? I think that would be a good place to take the step, because your story, Melissa, resonates with me, right? Like,
Yeah, me
I
too.
must control everything.
Yeah, I agree with what you said too, Melissa. And I love your question, Amanda. And because I too grew up in a household where I didn't have a lot of control. It was like our dad's way or the highway. And so as I got older, I thought, well, it worked for my dad, so it might work for me too, to control everything and everything. So I have had a lot of experience of forcing outcomes, Amanda, a lot of experience. And thank goodness for my 12-step recovery process, because I would go into situations thinking, I know what's best here. And I think this is the way it should go. And I don't agree with this person. I don't agree with that person. They're just, who do they think they are? And I would go and I would be just stuck to my decision. And then something happened on my way, on my journey, and my heart began to soften and I began to listen to people. I think that's probably the biggest thing that a controller can do, is start listening to really what people are saying and really pay attention to what's going on around you. And then I started to realize that, everybody has something to add to the conversation, to whatever's going on. And if I can just slow myself down enough to listen and pause, like that's kind of surrender for me, is just slowing down and pausing and paying attention to what's going on around me. I think that answers, the difference was I could just force. It's my way or the highway, or I can just say, maybe there's something to be learned here. Maybe this person really does have a point and I need to consider it. And yeah, I had a really big experience in a nonprofit that I work with. And I was certain that something should happen. And within a year, it took a while for me to come to it, but within a year I had a totally different thought. And yeah, and it just changed. It's just been effortless, actually, what we've been doing. And I just keep remembering that I have a higher power guiding me, and it's not Penny that gets to run the show, So yeah. Did that answer your question, Amanda? Kinda.
It did, in a very circular way, which I love, right? Because there's a lot to your story that I appreciate, that is, I don't know if it actually, answers the question, the difference between surrender and forcing outcomes. It might. It's a great example of it. And it's what's even better in it is it's a tool to get out of it. Yeah. Does anybody else have any a difference between surrender and forcing outcomes, or an example specifically of what you were trying to force and what it looked like after you surrendered?
Well, I have one. When my oldest son graduated from high school, of course, I was like, well, of course you have to go to college now. There's just no other. Yeah, you should. That's a should, and you have to. And so I helped him. Well, I did it all really. I got him into a school. And I got him into a school in Florida where he was going because he wanted to be with his high school girlfriend. So he went down there. I got him into school. I texted him. I'm like, these are your classes. This is your first. Yeah. This is your first. You're going to start in the summer. These are the classes that were available. And these are the times that you're going. Like, bye. And so
I'm laughing just because hearing it is funny, right?
yes. And I paid for it. And I mean, literally and figuratively. And I put the money down, everything, and he was going to start with the summer classes. Well, guess what? He never went. He never went. And so
fancy that.
And actually, that was the second one. Right after he got out of high school, he stayed here for the summer. I was like, you need to take classes. So I got him in a local community college, and he didn't go then either. So now we're on strike 3, right? And so now he wants to go to school. And I'm like, I'm not doing this again. And I almost said, I'm not doing this for you again. He never asked me to do it for him. I just did it because the forced outcome I wanted was that he was supposed to go to college. He was supposed to go right after school or high school. And he is supposed to be successful because he's supposed to go to college. And none of that happened. So the forced outcome made me really exhausted. I spent a lot of money. I spent a lot of my time. And I think the worst thing that happened out of it, though, was I was resentful, so resentful and angry at him. And that clouded our relationship. And so I have had to kind of dig myself out of that. And now, as when we go to move abroad, he's coming with us and he wants to start school. So I'm letting him figure it out. And I'll show up at the last minute to help pay and, make sure things are working out. But it just had to be this way. Like literally the universe and Finn, my son, made it work this way. And it's so much easier for me now. Now I'm just like, oh, okay, let me know what you want to do. But I think I support him and I'm invested, but I personally am not invested. Like what I think should happen, how it reflects on me, all the shoulds. And so
well, it sounds like you are invested still, but you're just invested in love versus scarcity, lack, fear.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the difference in surrender and forcing out.
Well, I think so. This was going to happen, like hell or high water. He was going to go to school, right? And that did not happen. And that's sometimes what happens when you try to force an outcome. It doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And then you have to deal with all of that. You have to deal with everything you put into it. But for me, the worst part was how I damaged us. and how I didn't first hold him accountable for his own, or just allow him actually to have his own life and future. But there was a big part of shame in there that I was shaming him as well. And so I think it's just always going to work out. It will always work out. I think in the past I've had, like you said, Morgan, scarcity. Oh, this is not going to work out. There's going to be a problem. He'll never get a job. He'll live on the streets, like that kind of thing. That's the motivation behind it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Melissa, you've shared many times on this podcast how education was just part of your family. That's the way you were raised, that you go to college and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
And so
this is how we do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's no other way. Yeah.
Yeah. What a great teacher Finn was for you too, though.
Yeah.
I mean, because like to your point, not only was it disempowering him.
Yes.
That's what happens when we try to control others. But there's other places that we control. Like it's not just controlling others, it's controlling things in our world. But anyway, it was disempowering, or it was making him feel disempowered, maybe. I don't know.
Yes.
But also it was putting you in a state of not being aligned and not trusting that the highest and best is unfolding, not trusting. If you don't trust that your son's path is perfect, then how can you trust that your path is perfect? So, not a good feeling for anybody that was involved.
No.
And I'm just calling it like I see it, and we've all been there. So not from a place of
of course.
Melissa, I'm just impressed with the way that you're able to talk about it now and share this experience for others, right? It's And Penny, when you were talking, of course. And Penny, when you were talking about once you let go of control with your nonprofit, it sounded, you didn't go into detail, but it sounded like once you let go of the control, something better bubbled up.
Yeah.
They're both great examples. I love it. It's, I'm sitting here analyzing myself and trying to wrap my mind around, my journey prior to A Course in Learning, A Course in Miracles, right? Like there's that life before.
Drusilla, I love a course in learning, right? It could be the title could be that, Drusilla. Yeah.
Yes, when the lessons are lessening. So I think for myself, it's not really my personality to be very controlling, but I will say certainly especially not in parenthood. I think, we've had this discussion enough times that I've heard my son say that I wasn't controlling with him, but my husband definitely says that I am very controlling. So I've had to kind of analyze that and what it's all about. And oftentimes the things that we have studied in the course leads us back down the same road, right? And for me, the reason it shows up so much in this love relationship, this special relationship, is my not feeling lovable in that way. And it makes so much sense to me why I would be trying to control the outcome, trying to control the situation, manipulate, the relationship as it relates to that. So I think it probably would be helpful to our audience to kind of think about if there's control only in certain specific areas, what's behind that? What's the belief that we're carrying about ourselves? And I think we can usually pretty easily find our way back to kind of loosening up the control.
Yeah.
I think trust we have to talk about trust when we talk about control. If you, like for me in my history, if I didn't have something to trust that it was going to catch my fall. I went to Catholic schools, right? I mean, but that was more like judging my every move. It wasn't like the control. So the control, I had to trust that if everything dropped out from underneath my family, I would be okay. And I don't think we had that feeling in our family. I think there was a lot of fear. And so once I started working on trusting higher power, trusting the path, trusting other people, then I could start letting go of my grip on the world. Like literally, I think some of my grip was just, I thought, keeping me alive or keeping me safe. And so I think it comes with little steps in that direction, little steps. If you didn't grow up in a home that was very trustworthy or trusting or safe, then I think as you get older and you start parenting yourself, you have to start developing little pieces and places to trust.
That's a really good point, Melissa. It really does boil down to trust and faith. That everything that's unfolding is unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to be. And if I can take I have this great visual, and I often think about it that like I'm on the river and I'm in a canoe and I'm rowing against the current so hard, and then I'm getting nowhere. But if I just take the oars up out of the water and just go with the flow, it's like life is so much better, so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
I find myself rowing against the current still a lot. I'm getting better. Go for it, Morgan.
It's ingrained in us. Well, I just had this random thought that let me see if I can put it into words. Like if we were taught from an early age, like all of these spiritual principles about like how we are not a body and sickness is of the mind, and we can heal our body by changing our mind. And, we don't have to exchange our time for money, that abundance is our inheritance. And, if we were taught all of these spiritual principles from a very young age, how different our lives would be, because at that age, we're so like open and receptive. Instead, we're taught that, you need to get a job with the 401k, and you need to have car insurance, and you need to have health insurance, and you need to have life insurance, because you never know what's going to happen to you. And you have to always be prepared for the worst outcome. And it's just like, it's just in our society to try to control outcomes and to try to put all of these measures in place in case of the worst case scenario. And it's such a backwards approach to life. But, it's not just if you grew up in a broken home, or a home where it didn't feel safe or it didn't feel trusting. It's in all of us. It's in our society. That we have to always be thinking about the worst case scenario and preparing for that and trying to prevent it from happening. And that is the opposite of surrender and trust.
And then the judgment that we have around the people that are maybe going with the flow of we're like going, what's wrong with them?
Well, let's talk a little bit I was going to say back to what Drusilla was saying, like where, in our relationships and where do we see ourselves being controlling?
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, so what is it that if we do backtrack to what Morgan just said, why do some people then, have that strong urge to control and others don't? Like, what is that all about?
I think
For me,
yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
yeah, for me, all of my super controlling behaviors stemmed from some type of fear.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, like what Morgan was saying, like the society, there's an underlying fear of the worst outcome. So, for me, that's what whatever fear you know
exactly.
It could be all kinds of fears of all kinds of things.
Yeah. So then to directly answer Drusilla's question, people who are more controlling than others, I would say have more fear.
Yeah.
And insecurity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a fear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of not being loved.
So if I could ask a couple of really pointed questions to Penny and Melissa, only because you're the ones that gave examples. So Penny, like, what was your fear in your charity thing?
So it was an Al-Anon thing, and we had a bookstore, and the bookstore had not been solvent. It had been in the red for months and months and months and months. And I just said, I'm a businesswoman. This is ridiculous. Why are we just bleeding blood all over the place? It's a stupid bookstore. They can order stuff online. And that's my thought process. I go, this is ridiculous. Why would we want to use our donations in this way? We got to close that bookstore down. And that was my philosophy. And I spread it wide, honestly. And then some stuff, I guess I started listening, and I have a really great service sponsor that kind of helped me to shepherd me through maybe looking at it from a different perspective, because I was just looking at it from one way. And I didn't care about what everybody else was saying, honestly, because I didn't think they were, I was in so much judgment. And then, like I said, my heart started to soften, and I started to realize what a service the bookstore was and how it made it easier for people to get their literature easier and faster. And we were in this crappy little location that was just gross. And we never considered that we could move to a new location where it was light and airy and had great energy. And it happened after we decided we were keeping the bookstore. And it wasn't just my decision. I'm not the one that's in charge. See, I thought I was in charge for a while. Right. Yeah. And I'm not in charge. And we voted to keep, we did a survey, and everybody wanted, not everybody, but 75% of the people wanted the bookstore. They loved it. It had been around for 35 years. And I was trying to close down, a tradition. But really, when I really just paused and heard what everybody was saying, and, in 12-step recovery, the group conscious is what goes. And you either go along with it or you find someplace else to go. And I decided to go along with it and to really take a look at it and to try to figure out what was my fear. And it was unfounded. My God, the whole budget for the inner group that I'm part of is like $50,000 a year. Like, that is just, to some people, that's a lot of money. And I was fighting over 50,000. I couldn't imagine why I was doing that a year. So that's like, what is that? A month. It's less than $4,000 or $5,000 a month. I was fighting about that. I thought, this is ridiculous. And so I just let go of control, and I just let it unfold, and I let people, and it's been beautiful. We moved to this beautiful new location. It's light, it's cheery, it's airy. We never dreamed in a million years we could be in this new location, and we're doing great. We're making ends meet. Ends are being met. And that's all we need, is our ends to be met, right? And so when I was able to let go of controlling, thinking that I knew what was best, just everything just unfolded. And now I'm the biggest cheerleader for the bookstore. And people, I have to admit to people often, I was one of those ones that said this thing should close. And they all go, yes, we know, Penny. But yeah, so it was a beautiful process. It took a couple of years though for me to come there. Honestly, it took time. But thank God I have a program, and thank God I have great support and mentors that can, guide me and help me to see another perspective. I think that's the biggest thing, is I just had to get a new perspective, and that's what life is, right?
Yeah.
Getting a new perspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. That's a great story. I want to go back to something that we said in the intro and make sure that we touch on this, since we mentioned it in the intro. We talked about how releasing control can lead to more peace, which I think was demonstrated in Melissa's story, and more presence, which I think was demonstrated in Penny's story. But we also mentioned that it could lead to more productivity. Mm-hmm. Does anybody have an experience they could share about that?
Yeah, I can't be specific.
I try not to share. Yes.
Look, I'll have Melissa
Drusilla.
be very specific, but right now, as you know, my mind goes sometimes that when I'm only thinking the thoughts I think with God, I don't hold on to stories. So I go. But I generally speaking, the whole time I was filming last year, and some of you can go back and listen to those old episodes. But I literally, we had a schedule for filming. Of course, people have to know where to show up to and what to do. But we had so many cases where things went awry. And I made sure that before we started filming, as the director and overseeing the entire process, that I was just going to surrender to the moment, no matter what happened. And I did. And when I can say that there were so many cases where we ended up in much better situations than I could have ever planned, and spending way less money than I could have ever imagined that we would have to, like getting locations for free and things like that when things would go awry. And, and that was a part of my building my trust and faith. And now I hardly ever schedule things, really strictly to the T. Any given day, I move things around all day long, just because I know that when I start to feel the pressure to perform or to do or to act, the shoulds come up, then I relax and I ask myself, what's the best thing to do right now in this situation? Do I need to move the meeting back an hour? And I do it, and I think nothing of it. Mm-hmm. And I do feel that I am, people ask me all the time, how do I do so much? And I stay so calm and relaxed. And that's the answer. I think it's much more productive to be present in whatever you're doing instead of forcing things and not being able to show up presently, show up warm and compassionate, and being able to present yourself in the way that you truly desire to present yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well said, Drusilla. Mm-hmm.
So, Melissa, I'll toss to you to give some specifics.
Well, I think that, I run a small business, and so guess how controlling I can be in that business. And I've really been working on letting people have their own departments doing their own thing. And I really have learned that when I'm not, I can still oversee things and make sure like all the parts are running how they should. But when I let go and let someone do what they're most talented in and what they have shown up for, and what they can offer their most creativity in, it always goes better than me thinking I know how to do everyone's job. So it's just bigger and better and more creative and more fun, and more productive. Because imagine one person trying to manage everything. There's never enough time. You can never get it all done. Not only that, but I never have the maximum creativity and experience in all the departments, on all the places. So that's been a good learning for me. And I was going to tell this other story that birds of a feather flock together. So I have a group of friends that within this group, there's like 3 or 4 A types that are like super organized, super used to like taking control. And so when we would go someplace like girls' weekend, like which one is going to control it, create the place we're going, the menus, what food you're bringing, the activities, right? And I learned a long time ago to let go of that and not to try to organize the whole thing, because what happens is I have way more fun. It has always turned out to be more relaxing for me, more fun for me. Also, somebody else is doing like coming up with menus or places we're going or whatever, things I wouldn't have thought of. So it's just interesting when you're faced with your, like mirror on the wall, which a type person is going to control us all. And
I think that should be a post-it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
So, okay, get on it, Penny.
Okay, I am.
So
Are you
anyway,
guys controlling me?
yes, I know. Anyway, yeah, I think that's a cute little story.
That is a cute little story. Yeah.
So let's talk a little tiny bit about how you change that, how you shift it in just little tiny ways.
Yeah.
Because for me, it had to start small, little ways. And we've talked about this before, like with Michael Singer. And his suggestion is try it in the car. Try driving and not trying to control everyone who's driving around you.
Mm-hmm.
Try to just drive down the road and let people just come in front of you, and you stay in your little lane and do your thing, and see how you feel through the drive. See where your destination is. When you get there, you're still going to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably with a lot less aggravation. And the weather. Who can control the weather, right? So, okay. And we know my story. Like, I'm moving so I don't have to be in the snow anymore. But as I was in the last few years, like, okay, it's snowing again. And let go of that. So, any other suggestions?
In the positive intelligence work that I'm doing, the PQ program, they talk about learning to ride the waves, right? Because we can't control the wind or the waves, but we can learn to ride them. So it's all about becoming a surfer of what's going on. And maybe this week, just pause a moment before you respond. Well, usually it's a reaction, but respond versus react. So just pause and take a breath, and then determine, like Drusilla said a little earlier, like what's the next right thing that I should be doing here? Like what's the next best thing to say? Versus just going into the old pattern of thinking that control is the answer, that I need to do it all. Yeah.
And what about what's the next loving thing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you talked about being right, Penny. I know when my controlling, I think I'm right. So what would be different than the next right move would be what is the next loving thing to do?
Yeah, I like that, Melissa. I remember reading somewhere that, like the example about driving in the car and the urge to like honk your horn at someone because they're, cutting you off or something. To just imagine that that's your 16-year-old child just learning how to drive, or that's your grandmother that, doesn't know which way
Doesn't
to
need to be
turn.
driving.
Right. But would you want to honk your horn and scare them, or would you want to make them feel, a type of way or something, and just to feel your heart soften, by thinking of things like that and putting a little compassion in your day.
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking of what I used to do at work when I had like a strong opinion about something that should be done or should be done a specific way. And I had a certain level of authority, but I wasn't the boss. I wasn't the end all be all. And so if the boss didn't immediately see my point of view or agree with my course of action, I got to a point from doing A Course in Miracles and my spiritual work that I was able to like acknowledge that, there's not right and wrong. That's duality. There's not right and wrong. There's not one right answer and everything else is the wrong answer. There's just preferences. And so I would send a very professional, loving email and outline the details of like why I thought that this was a good idea. And then I would surrender it. And I would say, of course, you're the boss and I'm happy to do it however you would like it done. And that was not fake. That was like sincere. And it was kind of like how it was the worldly equivalent of how you place something on the altar. Like you write it down, you put it in your God box, and you're like, whatever you say is good with me. Like, and then however it comes about is truly good with you. So that was kind of my way of practicing it. That was helpful in a work environment. And, a lot of the times it ended up going the way that I wanted it to go. And when it didn't, I was okay with that too. So
that's a great example, Morgan.
There's this, what can I read? Oh, Amanda, did you have a little tip or tool that you wanted to share? I have something I want to read from a book, but let's go ahead and hear your tool before I do that.
I'm an evidence-based person, so I'm a controller in letting go of control. I collect evidence. So I have examples in my life where what I thought should happen didn't, and it turned out better. Yeah. So I start really looking. That's what I had to do, is I had to start looking for those things in my life, so that's the simple way without going into specific.
Yeah.
You don't have an example?
Oh, I have a lot of them. Like,
give us one. Quick,
okay.
The Reader's Digest version.
Moving to when my husband and I decided to change our stars, I had a version of what my life looked like in my head, like the outer appearance, what it looked like. Where we live now does not look like what I had in my head. And I had to let go of what I thought it would look like. And it's even better. It is even better now. And there's lots of little things like my husband's decisions, right? I had to let go of controlling what my husband does.
Like
And
what he wore to your niece's wedding.
yes, I had to let go of all of that and start collecting the evidence that, you know what, my husband's a pretty smart guy, right? Like he does make good decisions. So that's my tip is to really look.
Yeah.
So you can hold control because you're looking for evidence, which is controlling.
And a way to do that, a way to gather evidence is through gratitude.
Yeah.
So reflection and gratitude on, let's say, the day or the move to New Mexico. Like as you're starting to see all these things that you're actually grateful for, you can see how the reality doesn't match up with what you thought it was going to be, but look how amazing it is. And sometimes you can't find that until you start trying the evidence, trying to find it with gratitude. Just another little way.
Simple.
That's a great reframe, actually, Melissa. So, Amanda, what I heard you say is that you were looking for evidence from a controlling place. And then as you switched to gratitude, yeah, that's okay. I'll stop. But that was beautiful. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah.
So I don't think we've talked about what to do with our shoulds. We talked a lot about the shoulds.
You should just not have shoulds.
You should not have shoulds.
No, you should not.
The shoulds can be that divine alarm clock.
Yeah.
You know, whenever you notice that someone is shoulding on you or you're shoulding on yourself. I mean, like for me, it has become an alarm bell goes off in my head. And I'm like, oh, I see what's happening. And then it's like, as soon as you become aware of it, it's easier to kind of step back and recenter and, you know.
And reframe, because you can reframe shoulds to coulds. Like, you know, we should go to the store. Well, we could go to the store, you know, and then it becomes a little bit more, not as damning, I guess is the word, you know, because shoulds are really negative.
I had a great friend that would say, don't shoulda, woulda, coulda me.
To that point, Amanda, what do we do with people? We often talk about ourselves and how we address people. We live in a world with a lot of different types of people. And I have a very dear friend who shits me almost every day. And I'm really sweet to her and I never address it. But just this morning, she had sent me a text, and it was about a person who, an artist, an up-and-coming artist, and she knows I'm putting together this show. And she sends me at least, I don't know how many times a day, who I should reach out to, you know. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this anymore. Like, it's really out of control. So I'm looking for some advice, ladies. What do I do with something like that?
Well, I think it's what we can do is recognize that it's a should, and also look at their heart. Because I get it a lot from my mom, and you know, a lot of us get it from our loved ones, and it's a form of unsolicited advice, which we've all been trained is not actually loving or helpful to give unsolicited advice. But most people who are doing it, are doing the best they can with the information they have. They don't know any better. And it is a form of loving expression in their eyes. They just want what's best for us. So like having that perspective can help prevent us from going into defensiveness and frustration about it. And I just trust that you'll be guided. If there's something for you to say to gently correct her, or if you just to receive it with love and gratitude and, you know, let it go. I trust that you'll be guided.
Hey, I would just respond back and say, yeah, I could contact that person and leave it at that. Kind of shuts down people when they're trying to shit on you. It really does.
Here's a big old kick in the pants. Like, are we trying to control someone else's behavior? Right? Are we trying to correct her shoulding?
Mhm.
You know, that's, I mean, since we're talking about control.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
like
everything's
that.
useful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as of now, I feel the little sting, like, you know, and it just makes me smile because I know that it's still me. Anything I experience is about me, right? So I just breathe and it dissipates and it never comes up. But I think it's good to at least have the audience understand that, there's also a spiritual way to deal with it coming to you as
Yeah.
well.
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you for that. Okay. Can I read this from Parallel Universes of Self, that same old book that Melissa and I've been harping on for months now? Okay. You are not here to repair what is broken. You are not here to convince others of your path. You are here to express your own path. It is not your job to force the world into conformity or sameness with you. Instead, you appreciate the diversity one can choose from. Rather than fighting others, you choose people who you like being with. By fighting something, you make it part of your world. I'm thinking of politics as he's talking about this. Conformity is stagnation. Diversity is creativity. I love that. Conformity is stagnation. Diversity is creativity. Having two different opinions needn't be a cause of pain and struggle. It can be a cause of fascination and laughter. Working to get others to agree with your reality, aka controlling others, equals working on conformity, on bringing the infinite unfolding of creation to an end rather than further expansion. Allowing validity to any viewpoint is paramount for the survival of the human species. If you don't grant freedom of speech to people you dislike, you don't grant freedom of speech at all. Allowing is even more than just tolerating, because tolerating still implies that you don't really appreciate whatever it is you have to tolerate. So should I allow all things? So should I allow things and people that are negative? Some might ask. But the question implies they haven't understood the law of attraction, by which you needn't experience anyone or anything you personally dislike. Anyway, it goes on. Let me see. There's this other. Okay, when you release your urge to control others, control circumstances, and find yourself to be source and cause of the circumstances you tried to control, you will finally see that you can make the world a better place by making yourself a better person. So there's more good stuff in there, but that feels like.
I love that book.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it's a great
Morgan.
book. Yeah, so I think we're about ready to wrap up today's conversation. So I have a few post-its.
Yay.
The first one is be invested in situations in love versus lack, limitation, scarcity, and fear. And we talked about how control is usually, it stems from fear. And it really boils down to trust. Like it all boils down to trust. If we have trust and faith, we don't need to control anything. And then what's the next loving thing I can do in this situation? I love that. And then, of course, the last one is mirror, mirror on the wall. Which type A is going to control it all? But really, just
We controlled you to make that one.
Yeah, yes, you guys controlled me. Yeah. And then I love too when you made that little we're on a course of learning. And really that's what we're really talking about today. It's like, what's the belief behind all this control? And when we can get that down to that, the fear that is running us, then we can have a much better life experience. So as we're wrapping up this conversation today, let's just pause for a moment and just take a breath together. And just breathe in the beauty of this conversation. And let's honor the courage it takes to loosen our grip, even just for a little bit. Remember, surrender isn't about giving up. It's about giving in to something greater, trusting life and love, and even productivity can flow with more ease when we stop wrestling with the shoulds and start inviting grace in. So maybe this week your practice is as simple as pausing before you react, or noticing when you're holding on too tightly, whether to an outcome, a belief, or even your own to-do list. And as A Course in Miracles reminds us, I need do nothing except allow a little willingness for a new perspective. So when we surrender, we make space for miracles, big and small, to find us. So as you go about your day, may you find the freedom that comes from letting go, the joy that sneaks in when you least expect it, and the quiet productivity that grows from presence, not pressure. If surrender is a superpower, consider this your invitation to try it on. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today. Next week, we're going to do something really fun. Well, here's that should word, but from should to shine. What can we learn from the men in our lives? It'll be our Father's Day episode. And so stay tuned for that. And so until next time, be gentle with yourself, celebrate the small amounts of grace. And remember, sometimes the most powerful move is simply to let go. Okay. That's it for today.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.